Hello, everyone. This is Dailey at Healing Heart Reiki, and it is Tuesday. I am live and coming on today to discuss three things you absolutely must know if you are working shamanically or doing healing work and you're connecting with non physical beings. Non physical beings can be anything from angels to gods or goddesses to other spirit forms, fairies, humans that have passed over. That could be anything. So today I wanted to break this down for you pretty quickly because um, as I've been preparing for my upcoming Shamanic Journey class, which I'm teaching in May for 4 weeks, I realized that there are just so many things that don't get discussed around shamanic journey that are so important, right? And a lot of you guys in this group, I know, are already very active psychically with beings. And so this is something that I see people kind of get caught on. So let's break it down. And if you're coming on, feel free to say hi. I would love to know who's here. And definitely, please feel free to share your experiences with beings, non physical beings, non corporeal beings. I think it really helps when we all get to hear kind of what people go through. So, number one, uh, that is important to know that you really must know if you're going to be working with spirits and if you're seeing dead people, is that these beings that you meet on the astral plane in your work, they really may have their own ethics. I think a lot of times we, like here on the earth plane, when we meet people, especially if you're meeting people through friends or through school, you're bound and you're brought together by shared values or something that you're both wanting to do. So you often will meet people that have a very similar ethical standard as you, right? And also there's just like social standards. Like here in the United States, we look poorly on killing people, for example, or like doing anything that's like overtly violent. We have laws and rules in place that in order to help us assure as peaceful a society as possible. But on the astral plane, beings come from all sorts of different spaces and they really vibrate in different frequencies and they have their own ethics and laws that guide them. So just because you're reaching out in good spirits and like with hopefully the best of intentions doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to attract beings that share those same perspectives or that same ethos as you. So it's really important to recognize that. And I think, like, as a result, I usually recommend that if you're newer at forging relationships on the astral plane with beings, that it's good to kind of err on the side of beings that you already know have a somewhat built in ethical system that's going to be good for you. So I like one of those would be like angels. If you are calling on the angels, most angels have an ethical system that keeps them aligned with the light, and they will not and are not interested in overrunning your own personal authority or your own rules, your own like how you're ruling your life. They're not going to try to mess that up or be manipulative in any way because that's just not the ethos that angels work by. So angels tend to be a very safe, like the archangels tend to be a very safe being to call forth. Whereas, for example, gods and goddesses, some gods and goddesses are super fun to call forth, can be very healing, very supportive. But gods and goddesses have their own sort of personal version of free will that they're working by. And just because you want something does not mean that they have to give it to you. So if you're working with deities, that relationship is going to look very, very different. They may not respect the decisions that you're making about your life or the things that you really want. They may not abide by the rules that you see as your own golden rules. And so you've got to be conscious when you choose those relationships of how those deities are functioning on the energetic plane, and whether that actually matches with where you're at and the systems that you rule your life by, right? The same goes for other types of beings. I feel like just naming these beings, I'm going to have to do so much clearing in my space later. But, fairies or Other types, we're not going to name all the beings, but other types of beings, people who are deceased, who've passed on, if they're stuck in a space, if they're like struggling with things, they may still feel that they have their own version of free will. So just because you're hoping that they will help you with something does not mean that they have to listen to you. So when you're working on the astral plane, be very aware of this and make decisions that are good for your level of experience. And, as you are just learning, when you're first starting, I recommend that you put measures in place to ensure that what you're calling out for can be met with the most resonant and um, like ethically matched beings as possible for you. One way to do that is to actually welcome Reiki energy into your shamanic process or into your process of connecting with people in the astral. Another way to do that is to be very, very, very specific about who you're calling, not only like the actual call that you put out there, but the vibration that you're in. So if you clear your own energy field and you really show up in this like highly resonant, loving vibration, that loving vibration creates its own forms of protection and will help you to sort of draw other beings that resonate in that space. Versus if you're just like a mess and you're going through it and life is tough and you don't do any kind of cleansing or prep and then you open up magical doors, you're going to get beings that are like vampiric towards that and just want to like suck onto you, and that's not fun. Like that's not good. That's where you get into more manipulative stuff. So that's number one. And if you have questions about that, feel free to ask in the comments or share your experiences. Number two is that relationships take time to build in general, right? Both on this physical earth plane and on the astral plane. So, a lot of times with newer shamanic practitioners and people doing this work, I see this kind of attitude where they'll like open up those magical doors and they're like, I call upon so and so and I need help with this. And then they're very like demanding, commanding, treating beings as if those beings have to do whatever they say just because. And they expect to just have all of their wishes fulfilled and desires and needs met like that, like ASAP. But like, think about that for a minute. Like if you were just sitting in your house and like you just called out for help and you saw some people wandering by and you're like, come do this, they might be like, no, like, who do you think you are? Right? It's kind of not good mojo, right? So, the relationships that you're building take time. And you have to know this if you're working shamanically. If part of shamanic work is building and creating relationships with beings, entities, spirits on the non-physical plane that help you to resolve human and earth-based issues, and not just for yourself but for your community. A shaman and somebody working shamanically doesn't just do it for themselves. You're really a vessel and a mystic and a voice for the needs of your people, whoever those people are. So um, the relationships that you're building on the non-physical plane happen a little bit at a time. So if you open up those magical doors and you're calling spirit in and it's a little murky, that's okay. Be kind to yourself, because you'll just go back and do the same thing and make the same call again and again. And it's kind of like, it's akin to dating, right? Like when you meet healthy, happy people and you just get to know them slowly over time, that gives you a much better picture of who you're dealing with. And like, that's what you want before you jump into bed together or before you like ask for huge things. You would not want to ask somebody that you just met, a friend or anything more, for some huge um, amount of money, or for some huge, like take me to the hospital or whatever, stay by my bedside for 12 years. Like, you don't do that with people you just meet. And it's the same on the astral plane, right? Build your relationships with those spirits over time, little bits at a time. Get to know them by just showing up and being in space, listening, opening up your senses to learn from that other perspective, to see if that spirit's perspective really matches how you want to move through life, and if the way that you're communicating, whether that's verbal through dreams or just through feelings and knowingness, if that actually is something that resonates for who you are and the work that you're doing in the world, right? Because non-physical beings like gods, goddesses, angels, spirits, they all have these different perspectives. And that just because they're on the non-physical plane does not make their perspective any better, any greater than yours. It's just a different perspective. Just like Aunt Susan and Uncle Josh and mom over there all have different perspectives about things. So the relationships you create, it's important to kind of get to know, like, in context, how those beings are viewing you and your life and your work and your soul evolution, and whether the wisdom that they can share is something that will actually match and be something that you can receive. Otherwise, you're just going to end up really frustrated. Like, why did I listen? Or you'll be kind of thrown off by things you hear if they're not speaking a language that you really understand. Right? And that's what happens when relationships become too intimate or too forced too fast in general. So you don't want to do that with your shamanic relationships with these allied beings. Are you guys ready for number 3? Okay, so number 3, oh, this is so big. Oh my gosh. Sorry, I wrote these down this morning because I was like, people got to know these things, but this is like so big. This is so big. If you're working shamanically, or even just as a healing practitioner in this world, and you are connecting with non-physical beings, you are channeling their energy transmissions, channeling their wisdom, or even just like being possessed by them and being aspected, which is common in many indigenous religions. If you're doing that work, it is so important to remember number 3. You are sovereign in your body. Your body is yours first and foremost. You always have a say, ultimately, about who gets to be in your body and who gets to plug into your body. Now, as simple as that sounds, it's something that I see new practitioners get tricked up on a lot. And I occasionally get tricked up on that too, even though it's been like years, probably like 25, 35, oh my God, 30 years of channeling. Um, it's so easy. Like, we can get into these places where we become scared of spirits. We feel like, oh my God, I think I'm being partially possessed or taken over, or this being is telling me to do this and now I have to go do that. Or I've heard like, this being won't leave me alone. I feel like I'm being ridden by this energy. There's all of these like creepy things that sometimes can come up with people. I'm trying to think of other good examples. Um, yeah, feeling just coerced, like you have to do things the way that your guides say. And that's not the right relationship. You are the one in charge of your body and your life. As a human, you have the most beautiful gift, and that gift is free will. That the moment that it came into this body on this planet, you decided um, to live this life and evolve as a soul. And you get to, for the most part, you get to choose a lot of those experiences that you experience on this planet alive. Some things, no, because life is a co-creation with spirit, with God, goddess, grace, universal energy. It's a co-creation. You're creating things with other people you meet. But like, your ability to recognize that this body is an integral part of your soul's energy is a huge part of how you keep yourself safe when working with other beings. If you as a human have had childhood trauma, where you had your boundaries taken away from you, you were violated in certain ways. If you as a human have been raised in families where boundaries were not honored, where maybe you said no and people said, yes, you have to eat this or you have to do this. If you've been in spaces where, as a child or in the past, it became a part of your template not to honor boundaries or even to see them because you dealt with people who had severe illnesses, and where those illnesses sort of got in the way of general healthy boundaries around your energy and your time and your life. If you as a child have had multiple experiences where people just plugged into you and you're used to being sucked dry by vampiric and toxic dynamics, where you're over giving of yourself, or where you have been so used to just saying yes or no based on what other people need or want, because that is how you've managed to stay safe in your life, by just going with the flow and doing what authority figures or other people tell you is the way that things need to go down, even when your heart says no. Those patterns and dynamics can be really deeply ingrained. And we don't want to bring those into your shamanic relationships with non physical beings. Because if you start relationships with non physical beings and you're just like thinking, oh, well, this angel said I have to do that, so now I have to, or else I'm going to be punished, you're setting yourself up for misery, like real misery, because you do have choices. And the message of your guides, those are actually just, they're literally guide messages to help you see the road in front of you, not to tell you how to live your life. And if a guide that you trust says something that doesn't feel good, then it's worth it to do deeper exploration to really understand why that perspective is at play and how. Not so that you just go along with it and you don't like how it feels but you go along with it. That's not what these relationships are about. If you want to stand in your shamanic work or your healing practitioner work, over time you'll really want to develop the ability to question those things that you don't understand, and to parse out your ego so that you get a more expanded view of the entire world and of the work that's in front of you. So, number 3 is critical. You are sovereign in your body. If you are channeling a being and you don't want to channel that energy anymore, you get to push it out. If you forget that, some beings will take advantage of that and they'll stay on, or they'll say things like, oh no, I have to do this. This is for the good. And that's not true. You always get to choose. You always get to choose. Same thing. If you've got beings coming into your home space and you don't like that feeling, you get to expand your energy and say, get out by my will, not even by divine will, by your own free will. You get to choose to reset those boundaries. And if you've struggled with that in physical human life, that might be a challenge for the energy work as well, but that's okay. It's an evolution, and that's why you have teachers and friends, human teachers and friends and guides and humans that can help you understand how to clean up those relationships and forge them. So, I'm teaching Shamanic Journey at the very beginning of May. So, if you're interested in learning more about creating these relationships on the unseen planes and really developing that sort of like community of guide energy to really just help you as you learn and evolve in your human life, then this is a wonderful class. Shamanic Journey Lower World will teach you how to journey to the lower realms, how to ground your energy, how to receive direct healing through shamanic methods, how to like work with a drum or a rattle or the sounds that allow you to actually shift from your conscious waking state into altered trance states where direct healing happens. And that's like just the surface. Like the class, I feel like the class is so rich, and I've taught Lower World many times in many different formats. And I think in just about every format, like this is an online based format, but even in the online formats, I think it's just so rich because the way that we do it allows you to like really drop into your home space or your personal power space. And if there are things that are misaligned in that space, or if you haven't yet learned how to like hold those sacred containers for yourself, the class is amazing for that. Like the online version is really, really good for that, even more so than the in-person version, which has its own gifts, right? So that class is coming. We have a couple of weeks. There is some pre-work for Shamanic Journey. So if you're curious to know more, message in the comments below and just say, tell me more, or send me a DM or like a direct message or text me. And I would be happy to show you the link. There's a link on the website with details. You can ask me anything you'd like about the class, and we can get you registered. Get you registered so that you can actually start some of the pre-work. It's just an amazing class, and we really anchor your lessons and your training in your own blood lineage and spiritual lineage and how you need to move in this world with this work, but keeping in mind these critical mindset pieces and truths about your energy, so that you can do this work safely. So that's it. Thank you guys for listening. Um, I don't see any. Hi, I see a couple of you. Hi, Vicky. Hi, Tony. It's nice to see you guys here. I feel like I saw somebody else kind of pop in, but I've been doing these lives in a way where I don't always see who's actually on live with me. So if you're watching this and you catch the replay, hashtag replay so I know. And feel free to ask questions that you have or just to share your thoughts about those 3 points. But I do think that they're super critical, and that, if you ever forget them, just come back, watch this video again, get charged up with it again, and we will talk to each other very, very soon about all of it. Okay, I hope to see you in Shamanic Journey in May.